Minister Bethlen Falvey here on the environment. Go ahead.
Mr. Speaker, it's worth noting that our commitment to renewing the auto sector is an example of how our government is helping to create clean and green jobs. These investments in clean steel alone are the equivalent of taking 1 million cars off the road. And by ramping up our production of clean steel, hybrids, and electric vehicles, we are showing that Ontario can hit our climate targets without imposing a carbon tax.
Sabrina Nanji is with us. Sabrina Nanji is founder of Queen's Park Observer. I'll note that the environment did not take a lot of space in this very large document. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, you know, to Tony's point, you know, talk about electric vehicle incentives. I think that's kind of how the Conservatives are framing much of their environmental policy. They went from ripping up EV charging infrastructure to now boasting Ontario as, you know, a battery manufacturing hub. And so that's kind of how the Conservatives are coming at this. The folks at Environmental Defense, the advocacy group, that I've spoken with, they're criticizing this, saying, you know, the environmental elements of the budget are kind of focused more on building highways, you know, which cut through environmentally sensitive lands, encouraging more people to drive by, you know, removing tolls, cutting the gas tax, getting rid of license plate renewal fees, that type of thing. And so, you know, certainly Green leader Mike Schreiner, who tends to punch above his weight, I'll say, you know, as the lone Green MPP in the House, he has constantly hammered the government on this about doing more. You know, we've got Diane Sachs, the former environmental watchdog, is running in University Rosedale. That's, you know, typically a Liberal bastion repped by the NDP for now, but certainly with such a high-profile candidate like Diane Sachs, is putting it into play. So I think we've seen the Ford government pivot, and I think that's because they know, especially, you know, when we look at the federal election last September, when Ontario voted overwhelmingly in favor of the Liberals and Trudeau and some of his climate carbon pricing policies, that was probably a sign to the Ford government's political war room, you know, that this can, you know, the environment is still very much important to a lot of people in Ontario. And of course, maybe the Conservative way to tackle that is to look at manufacturing and more on the industry side of things. Of course, I think a lot of opposition critics, the Greens, the Liberals, and the NDP say this is not going far enough.
Christine is in Flesherton. Christine, we're asking about, you know, what's going on in your own life that's shaping what's important to you. What do you think the government, how they should be shaping their own priorities? What do you think?
Well, I'm on a disability pension, and that's $1,069 a month, which is $14,028 a year. $50,000 is considered low income. Before this crazy inflation, his $24,000 was the poverty line, and we're not even allowed to earn money up to the poverty line without ODSP taking that money away. We've not been given any pandemic relief beyond $100 throughout the whole pandemic. So I now had to start canceling medical appointments. I don't have any money to drive to the food bank. I am down to one meal a day. And there's nothing in the budget for the disabled. People on welfare, they get $7,800 per year. Like, how is a person supposed to be living on that? 22% of all Canadians are on a disability pension. That's a huge voter block, and we're all starving. Like, especially if you're single and you don't have a partner paying the rent or something like that. It's devastating. Like, I'm literally gonna starve, and like, I was supposed to go to a breathing test because my lungs aren't working. I had to cancel. They're deliberately driving us out of our homes and into starvation because we only cost the government money. Imagine you have to live off $14,000 a year. It's crazy.
Yeah, the issue. The shortfall in the ODSP has become a conversation about particularly when put against those who are on CERB. I want to thank you so much for weighing in on that. Sabrina, the NDP, I understand, have a little bit of something on that, or trying to address that when they released their platform last week. Can you talk to me about that?
Yeah, I mean, Christine, I really feel for you. I know, the ODSP rates have not gone up in the last recent years. And I think we all know, $1,200 a month, almost $1,200 a month, is barely enough to keep a roof over your head these days. And especially with costs of everything going up, all parties except, we didn't hear much from the Conservatives. Of course, Premier Doug Ford is using his old line that says, the best way to help folks, with disabilities is to get them a job. But there are people who actually cannot work. And so all the other parties have been proposing and calling on the government to raise the rates, and I think that that's actually something that was missing in the budget from the Conservatives as well. And the NDP have kind of been playing this up as that they're trying to appeal to the folks that are being left behind, as they say, by the Ford government, by the Conservatives, by even previous Liberal policies that just really aren't cutting it for people who really need it the most.
I understand it's not a lot of money also to sort of top it up to equal to CERB, right? Did you get a sense to drill down into that kind of stuff when the NDP put out their budget?
The NDP, there was a lot more questions, I think, also
about costing.
Right, it wasn't a fully costed platform for them. Of course, they'll say that they'll work with the federal government to work on the clawbacks for that. But of course, they would be. It would be less of a clawback, if I could just put it that way, compared to CERB as well. But of course, there's a lot of caveats there that you've got to kind of work with the federal government. And of course, maybe now with the federal Liberal NDP coalition, if I can call it that might make it a little bit easier for a provincial NDP government.
Not quite a coalition, more like a deal, if I understand that.
Right, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
No NDP as part of the Liberal cabinet, but Dan is in Etobicoke. Dan, our question. Hi, how are you? What's going on in your life?
Not too bad. Thanks.
Good.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, what's going on?
So a couple of my close friends have sort of gotten more advanced forms of cancer because sort of surgeries were delayed during the pandemic. So healthcare is sort of the biggest thing on my mind right now. And I feel like we should have been investing a lot more over the last 2 years in that. And so I feel like the Conservatives pushing healthcare now is like too little too late. So that's where I'm coming from. Yeah,
there's a lot of questions there. So they are building some more hospital infrastructure, for instance. There are some questions about staffing. We'll have a chance to dig a little bit deeper in that in the next half hour. We have someone who's going to be able to take a much closer look at the details of this budget. Again, we've got our guest is Sabrina Nanji. She's a journalist with Queen's Park Observer. But Mustafa Askari is going to be with us. He's chief economist at the Institute of Fiscal Studies and Democracy. What's going on in your life that should be shaping government priorities? That's our question this hour. 1-888-817-8995. Our Twitter handle is at CBC Ontario Today. Stand by now for your local news and weather. We'll be right back for more of your calls in 90 seconds.
From the CBC Kitchener-Waterloo newsroom, I'm Josette Lafleur. 41 women who have been chronically homeless will soon have a place to call home. Construction is complete, and the first group of women move into new supportive housing units on Block Line Road on Monday. Abla Chulo is the Director of Homelessness and Housing for YWCA.
We've been doing lease signing with the tenants who'll be moving in, and we've been doing it on site, and they've just been so ecstatic. They get to see their unit. They even feel overwhelmed. Some of them even left yesterday crying because it's finally here.
Cholu says a mobile food bank and mental health and addiction supports will be on site several days a week. She says seeing 41 women move into these units cuts the YWCA's housing wait list almost in half. Here is your Environment Canada weather forecast for Waterloo Region and Wellington County. We are in for a sunny day today, going to get up to a high of 13. Then tonight, clear sky with a low of -2. The wind chill will make it feel more like -4 overnight. That sun is going to continue into Saturday, giving us a high of 15, low of +5. Sunday will be cloudy with a 60% chance of showers, a high of 14, and then showers are expected in the evening with a low of 9.
To Ontario Today, I'm Amanda Pfeffer. This hour, the Ford government's election budget.
There is only one party in this House capable of the strong financial management necessary to make the investments that our province needs. That is this party. And this is the government led by Premier Ford.
What's going on in your life that should be shaping the government's priority? That's our question this hour. 1-888-817-8995. The Finance Minister, Peter Bethlen-Falvey, hammered home the Progressive Conservative slogan for the upcoming campaign.
This is our plan, and we will get it done. It's time to get it done. Let's get it done.
Unlike the cost-cutting platform in the Ford campaign in 2018, this is a big spending plan. It includes a $20 billion deficit forecast, higher than each of the pandemic years. But it's clear the books are looking good. Corporate tax revenue is at a record high, jumping 25% in a single year. And land transfer tax revenue jumped $2 billion in the same period. The focus in this budget is on big spending for infrastructure, $160 billion over the next decade.
Clearly, the pandemic, Mike, has exposed some of the lack of investment I'm going to be very blunt, by the Liberals, supported by the NDP.
Doug Ford's going to go right back to cutting the minute this election is over if we give him the chance.
This budget, this document, is completely lacking in the kind of ambition that I know that the people of Ontario have for our province and want to see for the future of our province.
The opposition is not afraid to weigh in. Coming up, we're going to take a deeper dive into the details of this budget with an economist, and we want to hear from you. What's going on in your life that should be shaping the government's priorities this election? 1-888-817-8995. Our Twitter handle is @CBC Ontario Today. As mentioned, there's a big focus on infrastructure spending with a plan for the next decade to build highways, public transit, hospitals, schools. There's also a few affordability items to help with rising inflation. Many of those have already been announced, like the rebate on license registration fees and the cut to the provincial gas tax. But there's a couple of new tax breaks in this budget. There's a promised enhancement of the low-income individuals and families tax credit called the LIFT credit. So that more workers can be eligible for at least a partial rebate on their income tax. Another commitment is aimed at seniors who want to stay home longer. The Ontario Seniors Care at Home tax credit is available for people over 70 and offers a tax credit for things like home oxygen and attendant care. And of course, you can't have any of those things unless you elect the Progressive Conservative government. Joining us to take a deeper dive into this budget is Mustafa Askari. He is the chief economist of the Institute of Fiscal Studies and Democracy, which is a Canadian think tank with a focus on public finance and state institutions. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Well, your group on the federal level gives a grade to parties based on their platforms when you cost out their platforms. Since this is their costed platform, what grade are you giving the Ontario PCs?
Well, we haven't had really a chance to go through this platform from that sort of perspective of rating it. But, I mean, overall, I was surprised actually at the amount of deficit that they presented in this budget.
$19 billion for this coming year.
Yeah, and it goes on for the whole period of 4 years. And I mean, there are a lot of spending in this, definitely. I mean, just this year, there's about $16 billion increase in program spending. That's a significant increase. That's a 10% increase relative to the previous year. And obviously, I mean, if you look at this as a platform rather than a budget, then I guess you can say that, well, it's an election platform, so they have all kinds of things in there to get re-elected. So But overall, I mean, there's other things in the budget that on the economy that there's a lot of emphasis on trying to boost the economy, trying to boost the manufacturing sector, the auto sector.
Let me just linger. Can I just
actually positive things?
Yeah, can I just linger for a second on the deficit for a second? I just want to linger there just for another moment, though. Do deficits matter anymore post-pandemic? There seemed to have been certainly a loosening of purse strings and really a show of what can be done with an economy when it has to. So what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I mean, deficits just in the short term, they don't matter that much as long as they're not out of control. I mean, as long as the government has a plan and has a fiscal framework that is sustainable in the long run, I can explain what that means. But then a deficit here and there, a couple of years is not a major issue. It doesn't have a huge impact on the economy that way.